My grandmother grew up in a family of 10 siblings in a steel town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When I was growing up, I used to love to listen to her tell stories about her family. She would tell the same stories again and again, like grandparents often do, and I would never tire of hearing them. Money was tight when she was growing up. Not only did they have 12 mouths to feed, but my grandmother's parents were both immigrants, and so they were also supporting an extended family. My grandmother's father worked in the steel mill, and my grandmother's mother also worked all of her life, mostly retail in stores. One of the stories that my grandmother would tell me was about a family meal. It was probably a holiday because the table was filled with good things. And she would talk about how at the end of the meal, everybody was sitting around having good conversation, laughing and joking and feeling full and satisfied. When her father noticed that there was some meat left over on the serving platter, and he tried, that was apparently a no-no. You had to finish it off. So he tried to get everybody to take that last piece of meat, but everybody was just too full. So he turned to my grandmother and he said, "Tilly, I'll pay you a dime if you eat this last piece of meat." And here my grandmother would always explain that back in those days, a dime was a lot of money. So as quick as she could, before her brothers and sisters could get in on the action, she grabbed that last piece of meat, and under her father's approving gaze, she ate it up. And as she put that last forkful in her mouth and chewed it up, she turned to her father and said, "Well, Papa, can I have my dime now?" And he looked at her and said, "Tilly, you had more meat than all of the rest of us had, and now you want a dime as well? Don't be so greedy." And my grandmother would throw her head back and laugh at her father's cleverness. And while I loved to hear my grandmother laughing at her story, I had a hard time laughing along. I thought it was horrible. I couldn't believe that her father had promised her a dime and then had turned around and wouldn't give it to her. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And I didn't like it. Kids like things to be fair. In truth, I think most of us adults like things to be fair as well. We like to feel like we've earned what we have. And we like, when we look at others, to know that they've earned what they got too. I thought it was interesting, one of the little girls said they felt kind of bad that the person who had worked all day didn't make any more than she did. We like to think that others have earned what they have, or that they will get what they deserve. Which is why I think it is pretty easy for us to understand the indignation of those laborers who had spent the whole day working out in the sun, doing back-breaking labor, who ended up being paid the same exact amount as those who had been sent out later in the day, those who had worked hardly at all. What I find most interesting about the passage is not the unfairness of it all, not that the landowner chooses to be so generous to those latecomers, but that he doesn't seem very smart about it. I mean, it looks like he's trying for a confrontation. I mean, it would have been very easy to keep things smooth. He could have been just as generous if he had just instructed his manager to pay the ones who had come to work first, the ones who had been out in the field all day long. If he had paid them first, they would have come up to the wage table. They would have been paid what they had agreed to work for, an honest day's wages for a full day's work. They would have left happy, feeling blessed that they had enough to feed themselves, their family, to provide their daily bread. But the vineyard owner doesn't use this simple precaution. Instead, he instructs the manager to pay those who had worked the least, to pay them first, so that everybody knows how much they have been paid. As one preacher said, this is a vineyard owner who clearly does not know a lot about labor relations. But I don't think that was the point of the parable. I think that the vineyard owner wanted everybody to know that he was generous, abundant in his generosity, extravagant in his generosity, that is who the landowner is in his very being, in the depths of his soul. I think that one of the messages of this passage is clearly that God is full of abundant generosity. But I also think that this parable has to do with our reaction to God's abundant generosity. I think it is sometimes hard to accept that generosity, even for ourselves. Lutheran professor of preaching David Lose suggests that this parable lays before each of us a choice as clear as can be. When we look at our lives, do we count our blessings or our misfortunes? Do we pay attention to those areas of plenty in our lives, or what we perceive we lack? Do we look upon others with solidarity and compassion, or do we see them only as competition for scarce resources? Do we live by gratitude or envy? The hard thing about this choice, Lose argues, and I tend to agree, is that it really is a choice, as unavoidable as it is simple. We simply can't be grateful and envious at the same time. It's like they're two sides of the same coin, and we have to make a choice which one it is going to be. Lose suggests doing an exercise, and I'm shameless at stealing good ideas, so I'm going to invite you to participate too. And the choir, I forgot about the choir. So the ushers, there's some index cards out in the pews, and we'll get them for you too. I'm so sorry. So there's some index cards, those ones that I was talking about earlier, that are along the inside aisle of the pew. Everyone should get 2 of those. Now, this is an invitation. If you don't want to participate, you don't have to. It's fine. It's fine. You can just watch or think about it in your head. Maybe you can rip them in half. That would work. So everybody get 2 index cards, and the ushers are going to help me redistribute. Oh, there's some extras. Kat has some extras down here. Do you need anybody out in the congregation need extras? Okay, Rebecca's coming with more for the choir. All right, on one of the cards, I want you to write some resentment, some grudge that you hold in your heart, something that you lack, something that you are envious of another. You're the only person who's going to see this, well, you and God, so I invite you to be honest, because honesty matters. And if you want, you can draw a picture rather than write words. So on one card, some grudge or envy. And on the other card, I want you to write some blessing in your life, some area of abundance, something for which you are thankful. I'll give you a minute. And when you're done, if you can hold them up in your hand, one in each hand, then I can get a good gauge of when we're ready to go on. Did you get them? All right. As you're holding them, notice that physically the cards weigh the same thing, exactly the same thing. But spiritually and existentially, one of those is weighing you down, like an anchor wrapped around your heart, while the other is as light as a feather. I'm going to invite you for now to hold on to both of them, but when we offer our tithes and our gifts to God, I'm going to invite you to let go of one of those. Just put it in the offering plate as it goes past. And hold on to the one that is your true intention. As a reminder, take it home with you as a reminder of the intention of your heart on this day, at this moment, of what you hope to be as you stand in front of the generous vineyard owner, as you stand in front of our generous God. In truth, we all know that we are the workers sent into the field at the end of the day. There is only one who deserves a full day's wages. Only one who has been laboring since the break of dawn. Only one who brings the harvest home. And it is the same one who first sowed the field and then lovingly tended it. And then with generous, loving care, gathered the harvest home. The one who invites us, each and every one of us, to enjoy the blessings of the kingdom of heaven, life and true life, and life in abundance. All praise and thanks to God who reigns in highest heaven, to Father and to Son and Spirit now be given, the one eternal God, whom earth and heaven adore, the God who was, who is, and shall be evermore. Amen.